I wasn't even supposed to be in that courtroom. Not in the way they assumed. I arrived 15 minutes early, taking a seat in the back, blending in like I always did. Slacks, blazer, no badge visible. Just another observer. The courtroom was already tense, the case was drawing media attention, and security was high. Officers scanned the room like hawks. I kept calm, focused. This was my assignment: observe quietly, report everything. Then came the side glance. One officer. Then another. I noticed it. The silent exchange between them. One whisper, then a radio chirp. I knew the look. Misdirected suspicion. The moment came when the bailiff motioned me forward. I didn't move. That's when it escalated. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me," said a deputy I hadn't seen before. His tone wasn't a request. It was a command. "I'm authorized to be here," I said calmly, remaining seated. "You're not on the docket and you're not with the press. Let's go." Before I could respond again, his hand gripped my arm. Firm. Too firm. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge hadn't returned from recess yet. No one stepped in. He dragged me into the aisle, muttering something under his breath. And that's when I knew, I had to end this now. I straightened my posture as he led me toward the exit. Every step echoed louder than it should have. I could feel every pair of eyes locked on us: curiosity, confusion, judgment. But none of them knew what was about to hit. "Sir," I said, my voice calm but cutting through the silence like a razor, "you're making a serious mistake." He didn't flinch. "You'll explain yourself outside." I reached into my inner jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately. That got his attention. His hand twitched near his holster, but I wasn't worried. Out came the black leather wallet. I flipped it open with practiced ease, holding it chest high for the room, and especially for him, to see. Gold badge. ID card. Clear as day. FBI, Special Agent Jordan Miles. His hand fell from my arm like it had touched fire. The room froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You just unlawfully detained a federal agent in the middle of an active court observation," I said, meeting his stunned gaze. "You want to keep going?" You could hear a pin drop. A reporter's camera clicked. Somewhere, someone gasped. The officer stepped back. But I wasn't done. I tucked my badge away slowly, never breaking eye contact. He was pale now. Shaken. His confidence had drained out like a punctured tire. "Would you like to explain why you singled me out?" I asked, voice even. "Or should we let internal affairs handle it?" His lips parted, searching for a response, but none came. Just a sputter of excuses that never formed into words. I stepped past him, back toward the center aisle. The entire courtroom had gone still, even the returning judge paused mid-step upon seeing the scene unfold. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, scanning the faces. "No, Your Honor," I said, turning to face her with professionalism. "There was a misunderstanding, but it's been corrected." She raised an eyebrow, but nodded once and moved to the bench. As I walked back to my seat, people moved aside. No one made eye contact now, not the officer, not the court clerks. The narrative had flipped. And they all knew it. The same man who had yanked me from the bench moments ago now stood against the wall, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. He had no idea I'd been documenting local courthouse misconduct for 3 weeks. And now he was part of the report. I returned to my seat, calm on the outside, calculating on the inside. I already knew the next steps. The cameras had caught enough. Witnesses were plenty. My report just gained a face and a name. From the corner of my eye, the officer shifted uncomfortably, still trying to fade into the background. But it was far too late for that. His radio crackled quietly, Someone was asking for a status update. He didn't answer. A clerk handed the judge a folder. She gave me one last glance, subtle, but measured. She was putting the pieces together too. That's when I stood up again. Your Honor, I said clearly, I'd like to request a brief sidebar regarding a security matter. It concerns this morning's incident. The judge looked over the rim of her glasses. Granted. My chambers. 5 minutes. I followed her out, the courtroom murmuring behind me. Inside her office, she motioned for the door to be shut. Your bureau? She asked without surprise. Yes, ma'am. Miles, Internal Oversight. We're looking into patterns of unlawful detainment and officer conduct tied to this courthouse. She exhaled sharply, eyes narrowing. And now one of my deputies just handed you the perfect case file. On record. On video. In a courtroom. During an official proceeding. She didn't argue. She just nodded once and said, do what you need to do. When I stepped back into the courtroom, everything had changed. The officer, Deputy Kern, as I now confirmed from his badge, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I walked right past him without a word. No need. His part in this was already written and signed. I sat down again, this time with a different kind of silence settling over the room. It wasn't tension. It was awareness. The judge resumed proceedings, but the tone had shifted. Everyone was more careful, more alert. Like they'd just been reminded that not every face in the crowd was powerless. My phone vibrated once in my pocket, a coded message from HQ. They'd seen the live feed. They were preparing follow-up actions. Deputy Kern would be interviewed before the day was out. And more than that, the courthouse staff would now be under quiet review for broader patterns. I glanced at Kern one last time. He wouldn't be dragging anyone else out of a courtroom anytime soon. Not without thinking twice. And not without wondering if they were one of us. By the time the hearing ended, I was already compiling my notes. Witness statements. Footage. Timeline. Deputy Kern never approached me again. He avoided my gaze completely as I walked past him, case folder tucked under my arm. Outside the courthouse, the sun was harsh. A few people lingered on the steps, still whispering about what they'd seen. I ignored them and walked straight to my car, tapped a message into my secured device, and sent it up the chain, target identified. Incident confirmed. Civil rights breach documented. Proceeding with review. Seconds later, acknowledged. Debrief scheduled. Full authority granted. I slipped behind the wheel, no sirens, no drama. Just one more case closed. Another line in a growing report that would one day rewrite how places like this operated. They thought I was a bystander. They thought I didn't belong. But I was there with purpose. And they'll remember the day they tried to remove the wrong woman. Mission logged. Name cleared. Power restored. Case closed. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. By the end of the week, Deputy Kern was placed on administrative leave pending a formal investigation. His record, once spotless, was now under federal scrutiny, every courtroom interaction, every complaint ever brushed aside. Witnesses from that day were quietly contacted for statements. Some were eager. Others, embarrassed they hadn't spoken up sooner. The judge? She issued a memo the next morning mandating new courtroom protocols, including mandatory federal compliance training for all deputies. But the real shift? It came in the silence that followed. Whispers turned to warnings. Officers who once acted without pause now looked twice. Court staff who dismissed certain faces now double-checked credentials, carefully. Something had changed. And as for me, I was already on to the next assignment. Different state. Different courthouse. Same badge. They wouldn't see me coming there either. But next time, They might think twice before grabbing the quiet black woman in the back row. Because some of us are watching. And some of us carry more than silence. We carry the weight of justice. And a badge to match. Weeks later, I received a sealed envelope at Bureau headquarters. Inside, a simple thank you note. No signature. No return address. Just a folded piece of paper that read, "We all saw what happened. No one moved, except you." You reminded them that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means we're listening. I kept it. Because that note, from whoever sent it, a court clerk, a public defender, maybe just someone in the crowd, said everything I needed to know. The job wasn't about headlines or takedowns. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reminders. That authority goes both ways. That not every voice is loud, but some carry weight. That even in a quiet courtroom, someone might be watching who can change everything with a single badge and the truth behind it. And maybe, just maybe, next time a woman like me sits down in silence, they'll think before they act. Because behind the calm face and still posture, might sit someone who rewrites the rules. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. Months passed. Deputy Kern's name disappeared from the courthouse roster. Officially, it was voluntary resignation. Unofficially, the message was clear: accountability had finally walked through their doors, and it wasn't leaving. The Bureau's review triggered broader reforms. Hidden complaints resurfaced. Training modules were rewritten. Officers were required to complete implicit conduct seminars. Judges took a closer look at who they entrusted with authority inside their courtrooms. And across the country, in quiet corners of similar institutions, word began to spread: don't grab the wrong one. You never know who's watching. I kept my head down and moved forward, taking on new assignments. But my presence in any courtroom now came with silent gravity. I didn't need to say who I was. The uniform didn't matter. The badge didn't always need to flash. I had become a symbol they whispered about, the agent who sat like a ghost in the gallery, until justice needed a name. And that name was mine. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it just sits in the back, and waits. Until it stands. My official report was submitted, classified, and archived. But the impact, that was public. Deputy Kern's case became a teaching module in federal seminars on courthouse conduct. A dozen jurisdictions quietly requested cooperation with the Bureau's Oversight Division. And for the first time in years, I saw judges pausing before accepting the word of an officer over the silence of a civilian. Change had started. Not explosive. Not flashy. But real. That courtroom incident. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a mirror. One they had to stare into. And for every woman who ever sat in silence, questioned, dismissed, or dragged out unjustly, that day was for them, too. I walked into that courthouse alone. But I didn't walk out that way. I carried with me the weight of every ignored voice, every overlooked credential, every time someone said, "She doesn't belong here." And I proved them wrong. Final status: subject, Deputy Kern, resigned. Case impact: 3 internal policy revisions, 1 judicial mandate, 1 federal training protocol added. Agent status: active. I closed the file, locked the cabinet, and moved on. But the system knew now: the silence they underestimated was never silence at all.